What is the craziest thing you or your former spouse did after divorce? What is the craziest thing you or your former spouse did after divorce? My ex stole a car and did 18 months in state prison. Based on what I was able to find online at the time, he approached a car dealership and showed interest in buying a vehicle. They allowed him to take it home for a 24-hour demo. He never returned it. They reported it stolen after they attempted multiple times to contact him to return it. They then contacted the state police, who put a bolo out. They found him driving the vehicle on the other side of the state where he thought he wouldn't be found. I found out when I got an unexpected phone call from the sheriff's office. I asked why they were calling me about this. They said my ex. I told them I would vouch for him as a character witness. I told the officer over the phone that my ex was a lying sack of shit and shouldn't be trusted. The officer laughed, thanked me for my time and hung you. When I was young and still dating, my aunt told my mother not to get too close to my girlfriends. She had 2 sons and was always treating their girlfriends like daughters, to the point where after the inevitable breakups the girls would still call her for talks and advice. My cousins absolutely hated this, as this was before mobile phones and they would get to pick up the house phone to an ex asking to talk to their mother. I don't know if it was my aunt's advice or not, but my mother went the other way and my girlfriends were generally intimidated by my mother. Edit, finally added the comma. Mom's friend was getting divorced, wife was staying in the house, but left so the husband could gather his things, without her there, as he moved out. While packing, he gave the dog a laxative and locked her in the master bedroom. Poor girl had explosive malamute diarrhea everywhere. She was so upset about her accidents that she tried to dig through the door. That dog was such a good girl, it broke my heart. Luckily, the wife kept the dog and the husband was convicted of animal abuse charges, which helped the wife keep custody of the kids. You not only handled that so much better than most people, but you stuck it to her harder than anything you would have said. People rely on that back and forth, especially when we're angry. We feed on it. She's already pissed and yelling, so when you gave her absolutely nothing, you were not only telling her that nothing she said mattered to you, but nothing she could say could get you to even acknowledge she was talking. That shit stings. So happy you were able to come out on top, and sorry all of that happened to you. One of my friend's ex-wives thought she could just stand up and talk over the judge when they said something she didn't like, and she didn't pick up that the judge was giving her a death stare until he told her to sit down and be quiet. My buddy said he had to hold back laughter. Her lawyer was quietly begging her to stop talking and sit down. She did this before she had testified, and so when she got up there and proceeded to try and paint my friend as an unreliable maniac with no evidence to match it, he said you could practically see the judge trying not to roll their eyes. Apparently he was a massively unfit parent who she still constantly left alone with the kids. Guess she didn't think through how that would sound until my buddy's lawyer asked her why she would frequently visit her mom and leave him alone with the kids overnight if he wasn't fit to get overnight visits now. Her stammering, red face and total lack of an answer made for more suppressed laughter. Even his lawyer almost lost it. He said it took the judge all of 10 seconds to issue his decision. She made it easy. He got everything he wanted, which was joint custody and half of everything, so it's not like he was being overly demanding or anything. It's always nice when an asshole gets theirs. Doesn't make up for how shitty she was in the relationship, but it was some sweet comeuppance by the sound of it, and most importantly he still gets to see his kids all the time. She would stalk my Reddit account and angrily text me if she didn't like my posts talking about her cheating on me. I came home from seeing my grandmother on her deathbed and found she had cheated. She also texted me accusing me of sabotaging her attempts to get a job that requires a security clearance. Apparently it was my fault and not the fact she had already been denied a security clearance for mental instability. This was from even I was a kid and my parents were going through a divorce. My dad was a total sociopath. Manipulative, physically and emotionally abusive, drug dealing, the whole 9 yards. Even my mom was finally able to get out, he still had visitation rights. His family kept on bugging my sister and me, still under 10 years old, to try to convince my mom to talk to him. She finally did try to talk to him when she came to pick us up at the police station from where it was agreed to meet when he had his time with us. They immediately got into an argument. He started throwing one of his temper tantrum, grabbed my mom in front on a cop from the LAPD trying to beat her, then the cop grabbed him. He let go of my mom with a look of pure terror on his face. I think that was the day I realized he was sociopathic and didn't want anything else to do with him and his crazy-ass Bible-thumping family. Kidnapped the kids during their weekend visit and moved to a small town in the next state over. It took me 2 years to get them back. Wow, this got huge. So everyone doesn't have to read all the comments. I did get them back. She eventually burned all her bridges in the town she moved to and went home to her parents' house. Since her parents were not pleased with her choices and were on my side during the whole deal, they called me to let me know where she was. I went and got them. This was over 20 years ago and they have both grown up just fine. I've since remarried and my second wife has been a wonderful mother to them. It took a lot of work to fix all the damage, but it's mostly okay. The biggest scars that lasted was that my son has a distrust of women with authority, that he has worked really hard to get over, and my daughter was afraid to start her own family because she worries she would turn out just like her mom. She finally got over that and is expecting our first grandbaby this fall. I work at a university in a customer service role, so we regularly get people calling to try to get contact information for a student. Sometimes it's more legit, like a concerned parent who hasn't heard from their child in a long time, and sometimes it's not, like a dude who met a student at a bar and is trying to track her down in his own twisted Cinderella story because he didn't get her contact information. Either way, we can't share personal information. We can, however, send police/campus police to do a wellness check. I imagine most workplaces function that way. I had an ex-girlfriend text me once, asking if I wanted to hook up, when I was in bed with my current wife, but just girlfriend at the time. I was like half asleep and heard it make the "you got a text" noise, so I asked my wife to tell me who it was and what they wanted. LOL. She was initially really upset, but then I told her to scroll up. The ex had propositioned me like that 3 to 4 times since we had broken up, and she could clearly see I had either said no or never responded to the other messages, so we just laughed about it. My ex-boyfriend also faked being hit by a car after our breakup, but was at least smart enough to do it via text rather than trying to act it out on the phone. I asked him to send me a photo of himself in the hospital, of his hospital bracelet, or anything that would prove he was actually in the ER. He didn't respond for 20 minutes, then sent a selfie of himself standing outside of the hospital that was, what a coincidence, almost exactly 20 minutes away from his favorite bar. I questioned why he wasn't inside the hospital, since he'd only claimed to have arrived there 45 minutes ago, and he claimed to have already been evaluated, treated, and released, without any discharge paperwork he could show me. Killed or euthanize our dog, then lied about that he died of natural causes. Given the dog was old and blind, but bitch pleaded that she wanted a weekend with him, and then the next night sent me a fake text that he passed away during the night at like 3 a.m. because he coughed and then just stopped breathing. That shit wasn't true. I found out later after finding and calling the vet she brought him to, that she bad-mouthed me about and that he was suffering and needed to be put to sleep because he was in agony and I was supposedly letting him suffer. She had him out to sleep like the day she took him home, like 3 hours afterwards. Never got to say goodbye due to that bitch. When I told my ex-husband I wanted a divorce, the next day after I went to work he packed our entire house into a U-Haul and put it in storage. Even with a court order he refused to give my stuff back. I left my marriage with the clothes on my back. Years later he decided he was above the courts because he got away with that and took our son across country telling me he was moving with 1 day notice and told me I couldn't do anything about it. Of course I promptly hired a lawyer and we went back to court and he lost joint custody, but it took a year of fighting, chasing him down, and not seeing my son. There are more stories, but those are probably the worst. After he realized I was never going back, he told his mom that I had been stealing from the family the whole time we were together. Then he literally put it in writing that I had a key to his parents' home and would sneak in and take his dad's guns and his grandmother's jewelry, and that he had been powerless to stop me. It was always his druggy sister. Always. Anyone with eyes could see it, but no one in the family wanted to believe it. Called me and pretended he had been hit by a car while we were talking. He even tried to voice the crowd that had gathered around his body. God awful acting, but pretty funny listening to him try to mimic a woman's voice. Points for trying to be inclusive, I guess. I think he was trying to get me to relive my trauma of being on the phone with a friend who actually had been hit by a car while we were talking. Too bad he didn't realize that hearing the real thing is worlds different than hearing a dumbass try to act it out. Edit, I am so happy that I shared this. Y'all are making me laugh so much. While we were still married, she gets pregnant with the guy she was cheating on me with, who is also married to someone else. She has this idea that he's going to leave his wife and they're going to get married. She got a lawyer and filed for divorce. I get a lawyer too. Only thing is that he works for his wife's father, who is setting him up to take over when daddy retires. He realized that getting a divorce means his cushy career is over, confesses everything to his wife and begs for her forgiveness. His wife takes him back and he cuts off my wife. Seeing that her dreams of living with her BF are over, she claims that I'm the father, which is impossible because by that time, we hadn't had sex for more than a year before conception. This does not stop her from telling everyone who will listen that it's my kid. She has her lawyer drop the divorce proceedings. I tell my lawyer to start them with me as the plaintiff and that I want to dispute paternity. I move out. She starts stalking me. Shows up at my job and tries to get in. I work as a civilian in R&D at a military base. The MPs do not take any of her shit and wind up detaining her when she tries to run past the gate. She calls me at work to bail her out or something. I tell her that whatever she's done it's not my problem and hang up. I also was able to get a restraining order, which she violated repeatedly. She asked for everything, both cars, the entire house and contents, savings, my retirement account, etc. Plus 7 years of spousal support. I offered no support and half of the assets. If she wanted to house, she'd have to buy me out and refinance in her name only. My ex-husband started dating his stepmom, who has been in his life since he was 11 years old. His stepmom and him are still together almost 5 years later. His stepmom confessed her love of my ex to his dad a few years ago and they have since divorced. The dad is now dating a 21-year-old. I know all of this because I'm still close friends with my ex-husband's sister. It's so messed up and I'm so grateful I left him when I did. Edit. I can't believe this exploded, haha. Here's the highlights. Won't say where it all unfolded, BC small towns, but they are all from New Jersey. I am not. The father and my ex-husband don't speak, basically everyone in that family, except stepmom, obviously, hates my ex-husband and have cut him mostly out of their lives. It may have been a little grooming, but if you met my ex-husband you'd see he's all around a plotting, manipulative, shitty person, so I think it was the other way around. He constantly talked during our marriage about how hot she was. Pornhub, if you are following, I'd happily play the non-nude narrator to a cinematic universe for the right price. Thanks for all the awards, Upvodia. I've only interacted with my birth mother a handful of times in the last 38 years. It's a weird mix of I don't know her so I don't know what I'm missing out on, I wonder what she's like, and was there something wrong me? I have abandonment issues thanks to her. I'm thankful my dad won custody back in 1983, super rare then, and he's been my best friend through all these years. Edit. Thanks for all the kind comments and the other people who can commiserate. I'm thankful that my dad ended up marrying a wonderful woman when I was 2 and she raised me up until the day died when I was 18. That is my mom. Biology doesn't always matter. She got custody of our 3 kids, got 70% of my take-home pay for child support requiring me to move into the barracks. I was in the US Air Force, then she immediately moved out of state without telling me despite the divorce decree requiring my consent all but guaranteeing I would have no contact with my kids. That's not the crazy part. The crazy part is just a few years later she decided she didn't want to be a mother anymore, so she signed up with the carnival. I think she had the hots for one of the ride operators, and left the girls on their own without telling me or the girls beforehand. She called my oldest daughter a few days after leaving to tell her to call me. They hadn't called me before that because they had apparently grown accustomed to their mother disappearing for days at a time. Edit. Some have asked what's happened since. This was decades ago. My children are all grown and married, with their own children. They all learned after coming to live with me that I wasn't the monster their mother had brainwashed them to believe I was, and they all agreed to be adopted, as adults, by the light of my life, my wife, whom I would never have met if I hadn't been divorced. Only one of my children has any contact with her mother, mainly because my daughter still lives near where she grew up. That's where her husband and his family live, so that's where she'll stay. The best outcome of all of my children had the best example in the world of how not to be a mother, and consequently all 5 of my grandchildren are having the best childhoods possible. Smiley face. Got drunk and drove her car into the middle of the desert. Sent her friend a picture of the GPS and said I didn't love her so I wouldn't come and look for her. She wouldn't answer my calls but kept calling her friend saying I didn't care. I looked for 2 hours before going back home because I needed to work in the morning. She came home and started banging things around and came into our room and threw her phone at me saying I didn't love her. Punched me in the face multiple times and went to jail. After I filed for divorce she lost it. CPS wouldn't let her kids stay at the house because of the DV charge against her so they stayed at her parents'. She purposely stayed at the house so that I couldn't see my kids. I refused to be alone with her after for fear that she would hurt herself and blame me so I always went to the house with someone if I needed anything. She got tired of this and decided to just remove everything from the house while I was at work. I mean everything that wasn't in my kids' bedrooms she took out of the house. Curtains, ceiling fans, all of the furniture minus the dining table that I don't think she had room for. I thought well this sucks but at least she's gone so I changed the locks. She broke in and stole the locks the next day while I was at work, left nothing but the holes in the doors to swing open in the wind, took the window locks, cut the power cord to the garage door opener. Took the blender that I borrowed from my mom and popped the air mattress that I borrowed to sleep on. Then she flipped off the main breaker to the house. Swore to the judge that someone else must have done it. Kidnapped my 3 boys from my house when I went on my first post-divorce date. Our loved and trusted babysitter was with them. I left dinner ready and kids bathed and already in their jammies. Left for the movie theater when I got a text from my babysitter that she was sorry for not doing the dishes after dinner. So I texted back that's okay, I can do dishes later, but you've got a couple hours as well, the movie hasn't started yet. She was at home as my ex-husband had shown up, lied and said he was supposed to have the boys that night and that I had said it was okay. I was livid. I knew he was a bit crazy, but I had no idea he was capable of this. I stepped out of the theater, called him and he said if you are going to be dating strangers and endangering the lives of my kids, I will take them. WTF. So I called the police, they did a report. We went to court and he was found in contempt for violating our parenting plan.